The betrayal came at 1 a.m., when I opened my front door to find my granddaughter Lily, collapsing onto my porch with a swollen lip and tears streaming down her face. She clutched her ribs, gasping for breath, whispering through sobs that her husband had struck her after an argument about another woman. The greedy motive was as clear as the bruises on her skin. He had a mistress, a young woman he was spending money on, draining Lily's savings and threatening her place in their home. The shocking twist was not just his violence, but the knowledge that Lily had proof, messages, photos, even a recording, that could destroy him if used correctly. And I knew at that moment that my revenge would not be loud or reckless, but deliberate and complete. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I knelt down quickly, my old knees protesting as I helped her into the house. "Lily, sweetheart," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest, "what happened?" Her long blonde hair was tangled, her cardigan torn at the shoulder. She winced when I tried to touch her side, and I could see the purple already blooming beneath the fabric of her blouse. She shook her head, trying to catch her breath. "It's Mark," she choked out. He found a message from her, his mistress. I asked him why she was calling him in the middle of the night, and he hit me. The words made my blood boil. My sweet Lily, the little girl I once cradled in my arms, was now grown 26, and married to a man who should have protected her. Instead, he raised his hand to her. And for what? To hide the truth of his lies? I helped her sit on the couch, fetched an ice pack, and held it gently to her lip. "You're safe here," I said firmly. "He won't touch you again." Her eyes filled with tears. "Grandma, I didn't know where else to go. He said if I told anyone, he'd take everything from me. The house, the car, he said it's all in his name." He laughed and said I'd end up with nothing. The rage inside me solidified into something sharper. This wasn't just a violent man. This was a greedy, controlling coward who thought he could silence her by threatening to strip her of everything. But Lily had come to the wrong woman's doorstep if he thought we would surrender. "Did you keep anything?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. From her bag, she pulled out a small flash drive. "He doesn't know I copied it," she whispered. "All his messages. Bank transfers. Photos. Even a recording of him bragging about her to one of his friends." I stared at it, my heart pounding. A tiny object, but filled with power. Mark had no idea what his arrogance had handed us. He thought he was untouchable, but every man who believes that eventually learns how wrong he is. "Good girl," I murmured, squeezing her hand. "This isn't just survival, Lily. This is our weapon." She looked at me with a mix of fear and hope. "What are we going to do?" I leaned back, my mind already forming the first pieces of a plan. "We're going to protect you. We're going to make sure everyone sees who he really is. And when this is over, Mark won't just lose his mistress, he'll lose everything." Lily closed her eyes, leaning against me, her breath evening out as exhaustion took her. I stroked her hair, memories flashing before me of when she was a child, running through my garden with scraped knees, always coming to me when the world felt too big. Now she was back again, broken by a man who was supposed to love her. But this time, I would not just comfort her. I would fight for her. The night passed slowly. Every creak of the house made me glance toward the door, half expecting Mark to arrive, demanding his wife back, spewing lies. But he didn't come. Cowards rarely do when the light of truth starts to shine. In the morning, I made Lily tea and eggs, though she could barely eat. Her eyes were distant, but when she looked at me, I saw a spark, the beginning of courage. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you think I was wrong to marry him? Everyone warned me. You did too." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "You loved him, Lily. That's never wrong. What's wrong is the way he treated you. That's not your fault. Don't ever carry his sins as your own." She nodded, tears falling silently. Later that day, I called an old friend of mine, Martin, a retired lawyer who had helped me with estate matters after my husband passed. He owed me a favor, and I knew he hated men like Mark. When I explained the situation in guarded words, he grew quiet. "Bring me what you have," he said. "I'll look it over. If it's as strong as you say, we can start building a case." That evening, Lily and I sat together, scrolling through the files on her laptop. I saw the texts, the photos, the cruel messages Mark sent to his mistress, mocking Lily behind her back. Each word fueled my fury, but also sharpened my resolve. The world would see him for what he was. As Lily drifted off to sleep beside me on the couch, I stared out the window into the dark night. Somewhere, Mark was laughing, thinking he had silenced her. He thought his fists and his money made him untouchable. But he didn't know me. I had survived loss, widowhood, hardship. I had learned that when people try to erase you, you come back sharper than ever. And I would teach Mark that lesson. He wanted power? I would show him real power, the kind that comes when truth is unleashed and a grandmother decides enough is enough. The next morning, after a sleepless night of pacing the kitchen and listening to Lily's soft cries from the couch, I knew I couldn't sit idle. I had to start moving pieces. Mark thought he had control, but his arrogance blinded him to the strength that comes when women stand together. The betrayal was already clear. He had struck my granddaughter and threatened to take everything she had. The greedy motive was in every cruel word. He wanted to control her, her money, her home, while spoiling another woman in secret. The shocking twist waiting for him was this: Lily had proof, and he didn't know it yet. And with me by her side, that proof would become his downfall. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I called Martin, my retired lawyer friend, just as the sun rose. He answered groggily, but when I reminded him of the flash drive and what it contained, his voice sharpened. "Bring it over today," he said. "And Eleanor, don't breathe a word to anyone else. A man like this? He'll come after you if he knows you're building a case." I glanced at Lily, curled up under a blanket on my sofa, her face pale, her lips swollen. My heart clenched, but I steadied myself. "He can try," I muttered. "He won't win." We drove to Martin's small office, a modest brick building near the courthouse. Inside, the place smelled faintly of old coffee and books. Martin sat at his desk, gray-haired, wearing a rumpled suit but with eyes sharp as a hawk. Lily sat beside me, clutching her cardigan closed, her hands trembling. "Show me," Martin said. I slid the flash drive across the desk. He plugged it in, and for an hour we sat in silence as he scrolled through the files. Text messages filled with arrogance, bank transfers to a young woman's account, voicemails where Mark bragged about keeping 2 women under his thumb. My hands shook with anger, but I forced myself to remain calm. When Martin finally leaned back, he exhaled. "This is enough to bury him. But we need to be smart. If we go to court too soon, he'll spin it. He has money, lawyers. What we need is timing, and witnesses." "Witnesses?" I asked. Martin nodded. "People who've seen his temper. People who'll speak if they know they won't be alone. Do you know anyone he's threatened?" Lily's voice was quiet, but steady. "His mistress. Her name's Candace. She doesn't know I found out. But I've seen her texts. He yells at her too. He throws money around, but he treats her like garbage." Martin tapped his pen. "If she's willing to talk, we have gold." I turned to Lily. "Do you think she'd help?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know. She's younger, maybe scared. But if she knew the truth, if she saw what he did to me, maybe." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook, scribbling names. Neighbors who had overheard fights. Friends who had pulled away after seeing Mark's temper at parties. The woman at church who once told me Lily looked tired, but never said more. One by one, I listed them all. By midnight, I had a plan. Step by step, piece by piece, I would take the man apart. The next day, I asked Ruth, my old friend and neighbor, to come by. She was tough, with a voice like steel wrapped in velvet. When she saw Lily's bruises, she gasped, covering her mouth. "That man," she whispered, fury flashing in her eyes. "Eleanor, you can't let this go." "I won't," I said simply. "But I need help." Ruth leaned closer. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Over tea, I explained the plan in quiet tones. Ruth would speak to the neighbors, gather small stories, little moments they remembered, his shouting, the slammed doors, the late-night arguments. Nothing seemed big on its own, but together, it would paint the full picture of who he was. Meanwhile, I would work on Candace. The following evening, I called the number from the texts. My heart pounded as the line rang, but when a young, nervous voice answered, I introduced myself gently. "My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm Lily's grandmother. I know who you are. And I think you know who I am. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. I don't want trouble, she blurted. You're already in trouble, sweetheart, I said softly. But I'm not your enemy. Mark is. And if you don't stand up now, he'll destroy you the same way he tried to destroy Lily. Silence. Then a trembling whisper, he hits me too. I closed my eyes, fury searing through me. Then you know what we have to do. We arranged to meet at a diner 2 towns over, somewhere quiet. Ruth came with me, sitting nearby as a silent shield. Candace arrived nervously, her hair tied back, a bruise faintly visible under makeup. She was no older than 22, with eyes that darted around the room like a trapped bird. When she saw Lily's photos, her swollen lip, the bruises on her ribs, her face crumpled. He said I was the only one, she whispered. He told me she was crazy, that she made things up. That's what men like him do, I said firmly. They lie. They break. But they don't win when women stand together. Candace nodded slowly. I'll talk. I'll tell what he did to me. I'll give you the texts. It was the first crack in his armor. When I returned home that night, I tucked Lily into bed, brushing her hair back like I had when she was a child. She stirred, whispering, Grandma, do you think he'll ever pay? I kissed her forehead gently. Oh, he'll pay, sweetheart. With everything he owns. With every lie he's told. And when it's over, he won't recognize the life he once had. The house was quiet as I turned off the lights, but my heart was steady. The pieces were moving. His mistress had joined us. The neighbors were watching. The lawyer was ready. Mark thought he could scare my granddaughter into silence. What he didn't know was that he had awakened something in me, a storm I had kept buried for years. And once a storm begins, there's no stopping it. The betrayal was no longer just bruises on Lily's face. It was the way Mark strutted around town as if nothing had happened, flashing his smile, spending money that wasn't his, pretending to be the perfect husband while keeping his mistress tucked away like a dirty secret. The greedy motive behind every action was clear. He wanted control, money, and power, even if it meant breaking Lily to pieces. The shocking twist for him was coming soon, because the walls he thought were protecting him were already cracking. And when they collapsed, he wouldn't know what hit him. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. By the end of the week, I had more evidence than I imagined possible. Candace had sent me screenshots of their conversations, Mark promising her jewelry and vacations with money siphoned from Lily's accounts. She even gave me audio recordings of him screaming at her, threatening to make her disappear if she ever told anyone about them. When I played one of the clips in Martin's office, he leaned back slowly, shaking his head. He doesn't just sound guilty. He sounds dangerous. This is beyond divorce court, Eleanor. We're talking restraining orders, criminal charges. I nodded, my fingers tightening on my cane. Good. The more the better. But revenge couldn't be rushed. Martin warned me to wait for the right moment. If he knows you're preparing this, he'll lash out. We need him cornered, with no escape. So I played the role of the quiet grandmother, staying in my house, baking bread, attending church as if nothing was wrong. I smiled at neighbors, waved at children, even nodded politely when I passed Mark's car near the grocery store. But inside, I was coiling like a spring, waiting to strike. One evening, I caught him outside my fence. Lily was staying with Ruth that night, so I was alone when I stepped onto the porch. He leaned against his black SUV, arms crossed, smirking like he had already won. Evening, Eleanor, he said casually, as though he hadn't left my granddaughter broken on my doorstep. I hear Lily's been staying with you. That's cute. But she'll come home soon enough. She always does. I kept my voice steady. Not this time. He chuckled, shaking his head. You think you can keep her from me? Please. I own her. The house is in my name. The car too. She's got nothing without me. She'll crawl back begging, once she realizes you can't protect her forever. For a moment, my fingers twitched on the porch rail. The urge to tell him everything, to shove his arrogance down his throat with the evidence we had, was almost unbearable. But I held my tongue. Instead, I said softly, I wonder, Mark, how your boss would feel hearing you brag about hitting women. Or your mother. Or the police. His smirk faltered just slightly before returning. Empty threats, Eleanor. You don't scare me. I gave him a thin smile. Good. Stay unafraid. It'll make the fall so much harder. He pushed off the SUV, his face hardening, and drove away without another word. But I had seen it, the flicker in his eyes. Doubt. Fear. He was starting to sense that something was coming. The next day, Ruth brought me a folder she had compiled from neighbors. Mrs. King across the street said she had seen Lily crying in the driveway more than once, her arm bruised. Mr. Alvarez said he often heard shouting at night, followed by the sound of slamming doors. Small things, but enough to stack like bricks. Meanwhile, Candace grew bolder. She met with Martin privately and agreed to testify if needed. He told me once, she said, voice shaking, that he could break me and no one would believe me. But if Lily speaks and I speak, he won't be able to hide. You're doing the right thing, I told her. Men like him thrive on silence. Breaking it is how we win. Still, I knew Mark wouldn't go quietly. And I was right. 2 nights later, the phone rang after midnight. I answered, heart pounding. Silence. Then his voice, low and venomous, Eleanor, stay out of this. You're old. You don't understand the world anymore. You keep pushing me, and I swear, I'll make you regret it. I held the receiver tight, every nerve in my body burning with rage. No, Mark, I whispered. The only one who'll regret anything is you. I hung up before he could reply, my hand shaking. But this time it wasn't fear. It was fury turned into steel. By the end of that week, Martin had enough evidence to file both criminal and civil cases. But I wanted more. I wanted the community to see him for what he was. To strip him not just of money, but of reputation. So Ruth and I planned something bold. At the next church potluck, I would stand and speak. Not names, not details, just truth. I would describe the face of abuse, the lies men tell, the bruises women hide. And when people asked questions, as I knew they would, the pieces would start falling into place. The night of the potluck, I wore my best navy dress, my silver hair pinned neatly. Lily came with me, nervous but stronger, her bruises fading but still visible. When she entered the hall, people gasped softly, whispering. She lifted her chin, refusing to bow to shame. When it was my turn, I stood by the podium, gripping the sides with both hands. My voice shook only at first. Too many women in this town suffer in silence. Too many men think they can raise their fists and their voices, and no one will ever call them to account. But silence is ending. Proof is coming. And those who thought they were safe will soon face what they deserve. The room was dead quiet. I didn't say Mark's name. I didn't need to. Eyes darted. Whispers spread. Seeds were planted. Later that evening, as Lily and I drove home, she turned to me, tears brimming. Grandma, you weren't just talking about me. You were talking for everyone. I reached over, squeezing her hand. That's the thing about truth, Lily. It doesn't just free one person. It frees everyone brave enough to hear it. But as I tucked her into bed that night, I couldn't shake the sense that Mark wouldn't wait long before striking back. The doubt in his eyes, the threat on the phone, I had cornered him, and a cornered man is dangerous. Still, I whispered to myself as I turned off the light, come at me, Mark. I'm ready. The betrayal grew sharper when Mark realized whispers were spreading. People at church turned their heads when he walked in. Neighbors avoided his smile. He knew his image was slipping, and instead of facing it, he chose the path every coward does. He tried to scare us into silence. The greedy motive burned behind his rage. He didn't just want Lily under his thumb, he wanted his reputation intact, his mistress secure, his money flowing without interruption. But the shocking twist he hadn't counted on was that every move he made to intimidate us only built a stronger case against him. And this time, he would expose himself with his own anger. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It started with calls. At first they were silent, then mutters, then growled threats. You think you can ruin me, old woman? You think anyone will believe you? He didn't know that I recorded every one. Each time his voice hit the line, Martin had me press a button on a small recorder. Each call turned into ammunition. Then came the night he tried to break into my home. It was close to midnight when I heard the creak of the back door. My heart pounded, but I was ready. Daniel, Ruth's son, had insisted on installing cameras around my house after the last phone call. When the latch rattled, I stood quietly in the hallway, clutching the heavy flashlight James once used on camping trips. The door swung open, and Mark stepped in, his face twisted with fury, his breath reeking of whiskey. "Where is she?" he hissed. "Where's Lily? You can't keep her from me." I flipped the flashlight on, the beam striking his face. "You're on camera, Mark. Every second. Say hello to the police." He froze, blinking, before his expression twisted. "You think they'll side with you? You're nothing but an old woman meddling in things you don't understand." "Try me," I said, my voice steady. The red light of the camera blinked in the corner. He saw it then, really saw it. His face went pale, and he bolted out the door, slamming it behind him. Within minutes, Ruth had arrived, wrapping her robe tight around her shoulders, Daniel right behind with his laptop. "We've got him," Daniel said, pointing at the screen. "Footage is clear as day. He can't deny it now." By morning, the police had a copy. They issued a warning first, but Martin assured me it was only a step toward the bigger charges. "He's unraveling," Martin said, sipping his coffee across from me at the office. "Men like him always do. The more desperate he gets, the more evidence we gather. Don't flinch, Eleanor. You're almost there." But I didn't just want him cornered legally. I wanted him exposed publicly, the way he had tried to humiliate Lily. So we staged it. With Martin's guidance, and Ruth's help, we arranged a small family meeting at the community hall. We invited Mark, pretending Lily wanted to talk things out. He came, smug as ever, in his pressed shirt and expensive shoes. He thought it was his chance to play the victim, to twist Lily into forgiving him. But when he entered, he didn't just find Lily. He found Candace. He found neighbors. He found Ruth and Daniel. And at the front, on a projector, Martin stood ready with the files. "What is this?" Mark barked, glancing around nervously. "It's truth," I said calmly. Candace stepped forward first, her voice trembling but strong. "You told me she was crazy. You told me she made it all up. But I know what you did. You hit me too." She pulled back her sleeve, showing faint scars. Gasps filled the room. Mark's face flushed red. "She's lying." Then Martin clicked the projector. Up came the screenshots, his messages, his bank transfers, his voice recordings. Every arrogant word he thought would vanish was now shining 10 feet tall against a white wall. "No," he stammered, shaking his head. This is private. You can't." "You made it public the moment you raised your hand to my granddaughter," I said, stepping forward. My silver hair glowed in the overhead lights, my voice strong. "You thought no one would stand with her. But look around, Mark. You're outnumbered. And you're finished." The room was silent except for the projector fan humming. Then slowly, people began murmuring, whispering his name with disgust. Neighbors who once smiled politely now turned their faces away. His reputation cracked like glass. In a blind rage, Mark lunged forward, slamming his fist on the table. "You can't do this to me," he shouted. That was his mistake. Cameras were rolling. Police officers Martin had quietly arranged in the back stepped forward. His outburst, his aggression, it sealed everything. "Mr. Thompson," one officer said firmly, "you're under arrest for assault, harassment, and attempted intimidation. You have the right to remain silent." The color drained from his face. He looked around wildly, but no one came to his aid. Not his mistress, not his neighbors, not even the friends he bragged to. He was alone. As they cuffed him, he glared at me, his eyes filled with hatred. "You'll regret this, Eleanor." I met his gaze steadily. "No, Mark. The only regret here is that Lily ever trusted you." They dragged him out as murmurs filled the hall. Lily stood frozen for a moment, tears in her eyes, before collapsing into my arms. "It's over," she whispered. "Not yet," I murmured, holding her close. "But it's close. Very close." That night, as I sat on my porch under the stars, I let the cool air wash over me. The pieces were nearly complete. He was in custody, the town had seen his true face, and Lily was finally safe in my guest room, sleeping without fear. But there was one final act left, the courtroom. And when the gavel came down, I promised myself, it wouldn't just be justice. It would be closure. The betrayal that began with Lily collapsing at my door now sat in the center of a courtroom. Mark had spent months pretending to be a loving husband while hiding a mistress and bruising my granddaughter's body and spirit. His greedy motive had always been clear: control, money, power. He believed his name and charm would shield him forever. But the shocking twist had already been set in motion. The town, the mistress, the neighbors, and even the police now carried pieces of his downfall. And when the gavel dropped, there would be no going back. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The courthouse was packed the morning of the trial. Rows of benches filled with neighbors, church friends, and co-workers who had once shaken his hand now came to see what he truly was. The air buzzed with whispers, but when the bailiff called for silence, the weight of it pressed down on us all. Lily sat beside me, her cardigan wrapped tightly around her, her bruises faded but the memory of them still visible in her eyes. She reached for my hand, squeezing it. "I'm scared, Grandma," she whispered. I squeezed back. "Don't be. He's the one who should be afraid." When Mark entered in his pressed suit, flanked by his lawyer, he tried to wear the same arrogant smirk he always had. But it faltered when he saw Candace sitting near the front, chin lifted, her eyes steady. It faltered again when he saw Ruth and Daniel beside her, and Martin at our table, his folder thick with evidence. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp glasses, opened proceedings. The prosecutor laid it all out with calm precision: assault, coercion, intimidation. Then came the recordings. One by one, his words filled the room. "She won't last much longer. I own her. She has nothing without me. If she talks, I'll make her regret it." Gasps rippled through the gallery. A woman in the back covered her mouth. Even the judge's eyes narrowed. Then Candace took the stand. Her hands shook at first, but her voice grew stronger. "He told me I was special, that he would leave his wife. But when I questioned him, he screamed, threw things, and hit me. He bragged about hurting Lily too. I was terrified, but I couldn't stay silent anymore." Mark shifted angrily, whispering to his lawyer, but nothing could undo her words. Next came Lily. My heart ached as she walked to the stand, her shoulders tense. She looked small but unbroken. Her voice cracked as she described the night he struck her, how he threatened to take everything, how he mocked her pain. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't falter. "I thought I had no way out," she said softly. "But then I remembered my grandmother. And she gave me strength." I bit my lip hard to keep from crying. Pride filled me, fierce and deep. Finally, the defense tried to paint him as stressed, overworked, misunderstood. But every lie crumbled under the mountain of proof: screenshots, bank transfers, police footage of his break-in attempt, phone call recordings. His own arrogance had built the case that destroyed him. When it was over, the judge leaned forward, her voice firm. "Mr. Thompson, the evidence against you is overwhelming. You have shown no remorse. You manipulated, abused, and attempted to silence those who trusted you. This court finds you guilty on all counts." The gavel struck, sharp and final. Lily gasped, tears streaming down her face. Candace let out a shaky breath. Ruth clutched my arm. Mark's face drained of all color, his hands gripping the defense table as if it could hold him up. The bailiff stepped forward to cuff him, and this time, there was no swagger left in him. As they led him out, he glanced at me, his eyes full of hatred. "You ruined me," he spat. I met his gaze steadily. "No, Mark. You ruined yourself. I just lit the lamp so everyone could see it." The room erupted in murmurs as he was taken away. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. The storm I had carried inside me was finally breaking. Outside, the air was bright and warm. People shook my hand, hugged Lily, told us how brave she was. Candace stood quietly, and I pulled her into an embrace. "You did the right thing, child," I whispered. She nodded, tears falling silently. That night, back at my house, Lily sat curled on the couch with a blanket, sipping tea. "Grandma," she said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." I stroked her hair, smiling faintly. "You don't need to. You just need to heal. And one day you'll stand tall again, not as a victim, but as a woman who survived." Later, alone on the porch, I watched the stars appear. The air smelled of cut grass and hope. I thought of James, my late husband, and whispered, she's safe now. Justice is done. Inside, the recorder still sat on my table, the tiny machine that had turned fear into power. I picked it up, held it in my hands, and smiled. They had tried to erase us with violence and lies. But we fought back. We won. And I was still here, older, wiser, stronger. And that, I realized with quiet pride, was the sweetest revenge of all.